For over 2,000 years, an entire village in eastern China lived beside something they didn't understand. 5 quiet ponds, rectangular and still, sat among rice fields and crumbling stone walls. To the villagers of Xianbeikun, these ponds were simply a part of life, sources of water, places to fish, and playgrounds that parents warned their children to stay away from. No one ever said why. No one remembered when those warnings began. They just always existed. But one humid morning in June of 1992, a man named Wu Anai leaned over the surface of one of those ponds and noticed something that would soon rewrite everything we thought we knew about ancient civilization. The story begins like any other day in the small farming community of Zhejiang province. Mist rising from the fields, the hum of early morning insects, and the slow rhythm of water trickling between paddies. Wu had lived his entire life in this village. He'd drawn water from these ponds since childhood, cast his fishing lines into them, and watched generations of villages do the same. But something about these ponds was wrong. They were said to be bottomless. Villagers had tried for decades, even centuries, to measure their depths using bamboo poles, ropes, and stones tied with twine. None had ever reached the bottom. The poles disappeared into darkness, and when they came back up, they were clean. No mud, no sand, no resistance. Nothing. Just water. Endless, silent water. Even the elders didn't know where the ponds came from. They just whispered that strange things happened when people went too close at night. Odd ripples when the air was still, sudden flashes of light under the surface, and the eerie way sound seemed to echo longer than it should. And yet, everyone depended on them. Wu had never believed the old superstitions, until something happened that changed everything. A few weeks before that fateful June morning, one of the villagers caught a massive fish from the largest pond. It weighed nearly 18 pounds, unusually large for a small enclosed body of water. But that wasn't what unsettled the locals. The species itself shouldn't have been there. It was a deep-water fish, one that lived far below the light where the pressure crushed most life. If this creature had grown that large, it meant only one thing. The pond was far deeper than anyone imagined. That was when Wu's curiosity began to turn into obsession. He became determined to find the truth. Not the folklore, not the old wives' tales, but the real explanation. What was beneath that dark water? And so, Wu began convincing the villagers to help him do something no one had ever dared before. He wanted to drain it. At first, everyone thought he was insane. Why drain a pond that had given them life for generations? What if it truly was bottomless? Or worse, sacred? But Wu's determination was relentless. He argued that if these ponds hid something unnatural, they had a right to know. Slowly, one by one, his neighbors agreed. Together, they pooled their savings, hired a pump from a nearby town, and set it up on the banks of the largest pond. On June 18, 1992, the pump began to roar to life. Water gushed out, spilling across the earth. The pond surface trembled, ripples spreading into the morning fog. For hours, nothing seemed to change. The villagers laughed, saying it was useless. But Wu refused to stop. He worked through the day and into the night, determined to see what lay beneath. Days passed, then weeks. The pump ran 24 hours a day. Villagers took turns feeding it fuel, adjusting hoses, clearing mud from the filters. Still, the water kept coming. It should have emptied in days, yet the level barely dropped. And then, on the 5th day, something began to appear. At first, it was just a dark line visible beneath the surface. Wu thought it was a log, but as the water lowered further, the shape sharpened, straight lines forming angles too perfect to be natural. Nature doesn't make corners like that. The villagers gathered around, eyes wide, whispering prayers. As more water drained, the truth emerged. A staircase, cut from solid stone, descending into the darkness below. Wu's heart pounded. He shouted for others to come closer. Together they stared at what no one in their village, perhaps no one in the entire world had seen for millennia. Perfectly carved steps leading down into what they had always believed was a bottomless pond. That night, none of them slept. They kept the pumps running, the engines groaning under strain. By morning, more of the structure was visible. The staircase wasn't just an entrance, it was part of something vast. The angle of the walls, the texture of the stone. It looked engineered. And that could only mean one thing. Someone built this, but who? It took 17 more days before the pond was fully drained. And when the last of the water finally gurgled away, revealing the final steps, Wu Anai became the first person in over 2,000 years to descend into the depths of the unknown. Flashlight trembling in his hand, he stepped into the passage. The air was cold and heavy. Each footstep echoed like a whisper through time. His fingers brushed against the walls, smooth, deliberate, carved by hands that knew what they were doing. The grooves were too even, too perfect. The deeper he went, the colder it became. 20 steps, 30, 40. The light from the surface faded behind him. Then, the stairway opened into a space so enormous, his breath caught in his throat. The beam of his flashlight stretched into the dark, bouncing off towering pillars carved from the living rock. The sound of dripping water echoed from unseen corners. It wasn't just a chamber. It was a hall. Ancient, massive, unimaginable. And in that moment, Wu realized that beneath his humble village lay something not just ancient, but deliberate, engineered, and hidden for reasons humanity had long forgotten. What he had uncovered was not the bottom of a pond. It was the entrance to a forgotten world. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey into the unknown. What Wu and his fellow villagers discovered next is even more astonishing. If you want to find out what lay hidden in the darkness, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for Part 2. You won't want to miss it. See you then. The village of Bun lay silent under the morning sun, unaware that its greatest secret was about to be unearthed. The once tranquil pond, which for generations had mirrored the sky, was now a swirling vortex of muddy water, churning as the pumps roared endlessly. It had been days since the villagers began their effort to drain what was believed to be a bottomless pond. Yet the water kept coming. Like some ancient creature guarding its secret, the earth seemed unwilling to reveal what lay beneath. Wu Anai stood by the edge of the pond, his clothes damp with sweat and mist, eyes heavy from nights without rest. But his determination burned brighter than ever. The villagers whispered among themselves. Some said he was cursed for disturbing the old spirits, others said he was blessed by fate to uncover what their ancestors had hidden. Wu ignored them all. He had seen something below, something unnatural, something made by hands, not by nature. 5 days had passed since the pump began its relentless hum. The pond's surface, once calm and mysterious, was now low enough that shadows danced just beneath the surface. Then, one morning, Wu noticed it, a faint line, straight and unnatural, slicing through the murky water. At first, he thought his tired eyes were deceiving him. But as more water drained away, the line sharpened into a perfect right angle. Wu's breath caught in his throat. Nature did not make perfect corners. He shouted for the others, and soon a crowd gathered. The villagers leaned forward in disbelief as more of the structure emerged, step by step, literally. A staircase, carved from solid stone, leading downward into the abyss. For the first time in anyone's memory, the bottomless pond had a bottom, or at least the beginning of one. As the days passed, anticipation electrified the air. The sound of the pump had become the heartbeat of the village, echoing across the valley day and night. Children stopped playing in the fields. The elderly came out of their homes to watch. Wu and his friends took turns manning the pump, sleeping in shifts under makeshift tents. Then, on the 17th day, the last of the water was gone. The pond was no more. In its place yawned a dark, open shaft of stone, with steep, glistening stairs descending into the unknown. The villagers gathered around the edge, murmuring prayers and warnings. Some crossed themselves. Others whispered the old tales, stories of gods, buried empires, and cursed gates to the underworld. Wu didn't believe in curses. What he believed in was curiosity, and tonight it demanded an answer. So he descended. His flashlight flickered as he took the first cautious step down the slick, narrow staircase. The sound of his own breathing echoed off the walls. Every few feet, droplets of water fell from above, creating small, rhythmic splashes that broke the silence. The air grew colder, heavier, carrying the scent of wet stone and metal. The walls were smooth to the touch, too smooth for something natural. His fingers brushed across faint grooves, deliberate tool marks, perfectly straight and evenly spaced. Someone had carved this. Someone had built this. 40 steps down. 50. The light began to reflect off damp walls that seemed to stretch endlessly downward. At 60 steps, the passage opened into something vast, so large Wu's flashlight beam couldn't find the far wall. He froze. The beam of light trembled in his shaking hands. For a long moment he simply stood there, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Towering stone pillars rose from the ground, thick as tree trunks, perfectly aligned in symmetrical rows that disappeared into the darkness. The air reverberated faintly, like the slow breathing of something ancient and alive. Wu took a hesitant step forward, the beam of light cutting through the black, illuminating strange patterns carved into every surface, parallel grooves that rippled across the stone like frozen waves. It wasn't just a cavern. It was architecture. The realization hit him like a storm. This wasn't nature. This was creation. He walked forward slowly, tracing his light along the pillars, the carvings, the perfectly cut corners. His boots splashed through shallow puddles, and each step echoed eerily. At the far end of the vast chamber, he saw something else, a carved relief of a horse, a fish, and a bird. Ancient symbols. Wu's heart pounded as he tried to steady his breathing. He was standing inside something that should not exist, something that no one in the world had ever seen before. He didn't stay long. His instincts screamed that this discovery was not just incredible. It was dangerous. With shaking hands, he climbed back up, step after step, until sunlight finally blinded him at the surface. When he emerged, the villagers gasped. Wu's face was pale, his eyes wide with awe and fear. He told them what he had seen: the stairway, the chamber, the pillars, the carvings. At first, no one believed him. Then others went down, and they came back speechless. Within days, word spread like wildfire. Scholars, archaeologists, and soon, men in dark suits descended upon the small village. They fenced off the area, restricting access to everyone, including Wu. The villagers, once the guardians of the ponds, were now mere spectators to history. The experts began their studies, and the findings only deepened the mystery. What Wu had uncovered was not a single chamber. It was one of 24 massive underground caverns spread across a square kilometer near Phoenix Mountain. Each chamber followed the same architectural style: 4 walls, a single steep staircase, a complex drainage system, and massive stone pillars carved with impossible precision. The scale of the discovery stunned the world. 1 million cubic meters of stone had been excavated to create the network, enough to fill hundreds of Olympic swimming pools. Yet, not a single trace of that stone could be found anywhere nearby. Where had it gone? Archaeologists scratched their heads. They compared ancient texts, searched historical archives, but found nothing. No record, no inscription, no mention of any project of this magnitude. In a country where every emperor documented even the smallest construction, this silence was deafening. Some suggested it was a lost dynasty. Others whispered darker theories, that it had been erased from history on purpose. Even stranger, there was no soot, no burn marks, no sign of torches used during construction. In total darkness, thousands of feet below ground, how had ancient builders seen what they were doing? The caves were perfectly preserved. every surface crisp and sharp despite being submerged for over 2,000 years. Engineers discovered that the flooding may have been intentional. Perhaps the ancient builders had filled the caverns with water to preserve them. Wu would often stand at the edge of the drained pond, staring down at the entrance that had changed his life. He remembered the damp stone under his hand, the silent pillars stretching into the dark. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a structure. It was a message from the past, one he couldn't yet read. Months passed. The Chinese government classified the area as a protected site. Wu was rarely allowed near the excavation now, but sometimes late at night he would sneak to the edge and listen. Beneath the hum of the machinery, he swore he could still hear faint echoes, the same dripping water, the same cold breath of the earth. One of the archaeologists, a young woman from Beijing, spoke to him once. She told him that the caves were estimated to be at least 2,200 years old, built around 230 BC, possibly during the Qin or early Han dynasty. But that didn't make sense. A project of this scale would have required thousands of workers and years of effort. How could there be no record of it? She lowered her voice when she spoke again. "Maybe," she said, "it wasn't meant to be remembered." More discoveries followed. 10 of the caves remained perfectly intact. 14 had collapsed over time. Each one was unique in layout but identical in design philosophy. Deliberate, symmetrical, elegant. None were connected to each other, though some were separated by less than half a meter of stone. The precision was beyond comprehension for the tools and knowledge of that era. Theories spread like wildfire. Some believed the caves were royal tombs, though no bodies or burial relics were ever found. Others claimed they were ancient palaces or ritual chambers. A few even speculated they were ancient reservoirs, designed to store water in times of drought. But nothing fit. Every explanation left more questions than answers. One night, as Wu lay awake, he thought about what the caves truly meant. Could it be that they were never meant for humans at all? The carvings of the bird, fish, and horse, were they symbols or something else? Messages? Coordinates? He remembered the strange feeling he had when he reached the bottom, a silence that wasn't empty, but heavy. It felt inhabited. He turned over in his bed, restless. Somewhere deep in the earth, beneath the ponds that had fed his ancestors for millennia, something ancient and forgotten slept. And for the first time, Wu wondered, what if draining the pond hadn't just revealed the past, but disturbed it? By the time the government declared the site off limits, the world had already learned about the Longyu Caves, one of the greatest archaeological enigmas ever discovered. Experts called it the ninth wonder of the ancient world. The mystery captured imaginations across the globe. And yet, as incredible as the discovery was, one question lingered above all others. Who built them? And why? The discovery of the Longyu Caves spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Within weeks, the once quiet farming village of Cheyun had transformed into a site of global fascination. Archaeologists, geologists, engineers, and even historians from halfway around the world descended upon Zhejiang province, eager to witness the enigma firsthand. The local villagers, still dazed by the transformation of their ancestral ponds into monumental stone cathedrals, watched as buses full of scientists and officials arrived daily. But among the men in hard hats and survey gear, there were others. People who didn't wear badges, who didn't smile for cameras, and who never answered questions. They were the ones who stood at the edge of the cordoned area, clipboards in hand, watching silently. To the villagers, it felt less like a discovery and more like a containment. In Beijing, whispers had already reached the upper tiers of the Ministry of Culture. The reports were confusing. A network of 24 underground chambers carved from solid rock without a single historical record or imperial decree. Impossible. And yet the evidence was there, unmistakable and undeniable. Satellite imagery confirmed the network beneath Phoenix Mountain. Ground-penetrating radar showed that many of the chambers extended far deeper than initial measurements suggested. And the precision. That was what truly baffled the experts. Each wall was perfectly straight, every angle exact. The columns were identical, the chisel marks consistent to the millimeter. It was as if a team of modern engineers with laser tools had done the work. Except these chambers predated even the earliest dynasties capable of iron smelting. It defied history. It defied explanation. When the first international team arrived, a joint delegation from Germany, Japan, and the United States, they were stunned by what they saw. Dr. Heinrich Lutz, a structural engineer from Berlin, described the site as a feat of geological precision unseen in any civilization of comparable age. He later told a reporter, "If this were the work of hand tools, it's beyond genius. It's as though they understood stone the way modern physicists understand atoms." And yet, even as these foreign scientists marveled at the craftsmanship, they also began to notice something else. Something that didn't make sense. There were no signs of habitation, no soot, no carvings of worship or offerings, no remnants of torches or tools. Just endless, silent perfection. Whoever built this place had done so with a purpose now completely lost to time. Then came another revelation. As the deeper chambers were mapped, it became apparent that the Longyu complex wasn't isolated. Buried data from older geological surveys hinted at similar anomalies. Faint geometric voids in the bedrock, scattered across neighboring provinces. One of them was near the city of Hangzhou. When local authorities investigated, they found another system, a smaller one, but carved with the same distinctive style, the same patterns, the same impossible symmetry. It was called the Hashan Grotto Complex. At first, it was dismissed as a later imitation, but as more chambers were opened, the similarities were too precise to ignore. The tool marks matched. The dimensions followed the same mathematical ratios. Even the sloping staircases and angular inclines mirrored those of Longyu. The only major difference was time. Hashan was at least 1,500 years younger. That single detail raised a chilling possibility. What if the builders of Hashan weren't the inventors, but the imitators? What if they were trying to recreate something ancient that they had seen before, but only partially understood? International experts began calling it the architectural echo hypothesis. The idea that the Hashan grottos were a cultural echo, an attempt by later builders to replicate an ancient design, a sacred geometry passed down through incomplete memory or legend. But legends fade, and memories distort. By the time the Hashan builders began carving, they may have already forgotten the true purpose of what they were trying to imitate. Still, a deeper connection began to emerge. Some of the foreign researchers, particularly those from Japan and Italy, noticed faint alignment patterns between the cave orientations and astronomical markers. The shafts at Longyu seemed to align with the sun at specific times of the year, notably the summer solstice, while those at Hashan mirrored lunar angles. Could it be that both sites were part of a larger calendar system? An ancient observatory network built underground instead of above? If so, it would rewrite everything we know about early Chinese civilizations. But not everyone was eager to share these findings. Within months, the tone of the investigation changed. Public updates became infrequent. Access was restricted. Even Wu himself, the man whose curiosity had uncovered it all, was no longer permitted near the site he had drained. He was told it was for his safety. But he noticed new guards, unfamiliar trucks, and sealed shipments being loaded under the cover of night. The rumor among villagers was that something else had been found, deeper in one of the adjacent ponds that had yet to be fully excavated. Something metallic, something that reflected light even under the mud. But no photographs were ever released. In 1999, a formal summit was held at the site, attended by international archaeologists, engineers, and government representatives. For the first time, experts from 17 countries stood inside the vast stone halls that had once been a pond. They agreed on one thing. The Longyu Caves represented one of the most advanced examples of ancient rock engineering ever discovered. But beyond that, nothing. There was no consensus on the builders, no consensus on the purpose, no consensus on the missing stone, over 1 million cubic meters that had simply vanished without a trace. The official report, quietly released months later, concluded only one sentence of certainty. The Longyu complex represents an unprecedented example of ancient subterranean engineering. Its purpose, method of construction, and cultural attribution remain undetermined. Unofficially, though, the theories grew darker. A group of Russian and French geologists proposed that the Longyu and Hashan sites were part of an ancient hydraulic system, massive water reservoirs built to stabilize regional agriculture. But others rejected that idea. The design was too ornamental, too deliberate. A Chinese historian, Professor Liang, quietly suggested another possibility, that the caves weren't built for humans at all. He pointed to the strange proportions, the oversized staircases, and the lack of living quarters. These halls weren't designed for comfort, he said in a private lecture. They were designed for ritual, or containment. Containment of what, he refused to elaborate. Outside China, whispers of suppression began spreading among foreign researchers. Why were excavation photos restricted? Why was only one cave open to tourists when the rest remained sealed? And why did several of the research documents vanish from public archives a few years later? Some claimed the Chinese government was protecting a national treasure. Others believed they were hiding something far older and far more dangerous than anyone was prepared to understand. One of the more controversial theories emerged in 2001 from a Swiss researcher named Dr. Konrad Valen, who proposed that the Longyu caves were not carved into the rock, but from within, that a powerful vibrational or heat-based tool had disintegrated the stone from the inside out. He called it reverse excavation. Mainstream scientists dismissed him, but his papers quietly circulated among fringe archaeological groups for years, fueling the idea that the caves might be remnants of a lost, highly advanced civilization, one that had mastered a technology we no longer possess. Today, only a single chamber of the Longyu Caves remains open to the public. Tour guides call it Cave Number 1. Visitors are led through softly lit pathways, their footsteps echoing through the hollowed halls. The air smells faintly of damp stone and history. They are told about Wu's discovery, about the mystery of the missing stone, and about the centuries of silence that kept the site hidden. But what they aren't told is that beneath their feet, beyond the sealed passages and blocked stairways, lie 9 more chambers, each one perfectly preserved, each one sealed by order of the state. And somewhere beneath a neighboring village, more ponds wait, still and silent, just like the ones Wu stared into that morning in 1992. And the question that started it all, what lies beneath, remains as haunting now as it was the day the first drop of water drained away. The discovery of the Longyu Caves should have ended the mystery, but instead it deepened it. What began as one man's curiosity about a bottomless pond had turned into one of the most perplexing archaeological enigmas on Earth. The deeper experts dug, the more the caves seemed to defy explanation. Their size, precision, engineering, and the complete absence of historical records. But what truly unsettled researchers was this: Longyu wasn't alone. Across the world, beneath mountains, deserts, and jungles, other ancient underground complexes began surfacing, all sharing eerie similarities in structure and purpose. The more experts studied Longyu, the more they realized this mystery wasn't Chinese alone. It was humanity's. The following year, a quiet wave of curiosity began spreading among international scholars. From Turkey's Derinkuyu to Ellora in India, from the Cappadocian tunnels to the Hashan Grotto, experts were starting to ask the same question: How many ancient civilizations mastered the art of carving vast underground worlds, and why did they all keep it secret? Satellite scans revealed that Longyu wasn't a random cluster of man-made chambers. Each cavern's alignment pointed toward something, a pattern too deliberate to be accidental. One engineer from Beijing University mapped all 24 caves and found that their entrances seemed to follow celestial positions matching the Orion constellation, as it appeared around 200 BC. To skeptics, it was coincidence. To others, it was proof that whoever built them had knowledge far beyond their era. As the investigations continued, one fact became unavoidable. No records, no markings, no inscriptions. Nothing. Every other monument of that era carried the signature of its maker, a dynasty, a ruler, a date. But Longyu, it was as if it had been created in complete silence. For a site of this magnitude, silence is unnatural. It means someone wanted it that way. By late 1999, the Chinese Ministry of Culture quietly invited foreign researchers under a global collaboration program. Among them was Dr. Elise van Rijn, an archaeologist from the Netherlands specializing in subterranean structures. She had spent decades studying underground temples in Malta and Egypt. But when she descended into Longyu, she was stunned. She later wrote, "It felt engineered, not carved. The geometry, the repetition. It was as if machines had been here long before history." That statement didn't sit well with her Chinese counterparts. Several of her comments were reportedly removed from the official research papers. When she returned home, she claimed that her photographic records, over 400 images, had been confiscated for archival reasons. To this day, those photos have never been publicly released. Around the same time, rumors began circulating about the Hashan Grotto Caves, located roughly 120 miles northwest of Longyu. These chambers, discovered in the early 2000s, seemed to share the same decorative marks, the same design principles, even the same dimensions. But dating placed them 1,500 years later. Were they imitations or continuations? Experts were divided. Some suggested that the builders of the Hashan Caves were descendants of those who once built Longyu, trying to replicate lost techniques. Others believed the opposite, that they were attempting to recreate something sacred, something forbidden, an echo of an ancient order that once carved secrets into the earth itself. But the story doesn't stop in China. In 2003, an Italian historian named Marco dell'Acqua noticed an uncanny resemblance between the layouts of Longyu and a set of sealed catacombs near Naples, Italy. Their entrances, square, descending shafts, their ceilings, ribbed with identical tool markings, their depths, matching Longyu almost exactly. The only difference? The Italian chambers were dated to 2,300 years later. Dell'Acqua proposed a radical idea, that an ancient global culture, one that predated the modern nations, had once shared underground architectural techniques and knowledge of geology, acoustics, and engineering that modern civilization had long forgotten. His theory was dismissed as pseudoscience by his peers. But then, an independent team of Chinese researchers uncovered something that reignited the debate. During a 2006 sonar scan of the Longyu complex, a team detected anomalies beneath the known chambers. Solid voids, perfectly geometric, deeper than 40 meters below the main floor. They weren't natural cavities. They were sealed structures, as if the caves we could see were only the upper layer of something far older beneath. The team submitted their findings, but within weeks their equipment was confiscated, and the official report was marked classified. Local media was instructed to stop coverage of the Longyu project altogether. From that moment on, the caves went quiet again. But outside the government's reach, whispers began spreading through online forums and fringe archaeology circles. They claimed that beneath the deepest chambers of Longyu lies an unexplored tunnel system leading east, toward the Zhejiang Mountains, and possibly even beyond. A few locals said that before the area was fenced off, they had heard faint mechanical sounds at night, like distant drilling or humming from underground. The official explanation: groundwater pressure. Yet those who had been inside the caves before closure swore that no underground machinery had ever existed there. In 2011, a leaked academic paper surfaced on a private forum used by Chinese geology students. It referenced a deep subsurface structure under Cave 12 with unusual electromagnetic readings. The document disappeared within 48 hours, but it reignited international attention. That same year, satellite imaging picked up thermal anomalies near the sealed portions of the site, heat signatures inconsistent with the surrounding rock. Something beneath the caves was generating warmth, possibly movement or some kind of energy source. If true, that would mean the Longyu complex wasn't just carved stone, it was active. Meanwhile, Western experts were conducting their own comparisons. At Stanford University, researchers ran a topological pattern analysis comparing Longyu's floor plan to dozens of other ancient underground sites. Their findings were astonishing. The spacing of pillars and corridors matched almost perfectly with the design principles used in Derinkuyu, Turkey, the ancient underground city that once sheltered over 20,000 people. Different continents, different cultures, same architectural DNA, but what connected them? Some proposed a forgotten global civilization that once spanned the planet before recorded history, a theory known as the antediluvian hypothesis. Others claimed that these sites might be remnants of a worldwide cataclysm preparation, shelters built by ancient elites who knew something catastrophic was coming. And then there was the most radical idea of all, that these caverns weren't built for humans, but by something else. In 2015, researchers from a Japanese institute studying the Hashin Grotto discovered a strange magnetic alignment between several chambers. When plotted on a map, the angle of their alignment matched magnetic north, but not the current one. It matched Earth's magnetic pole as it existed roughly 12,000 years ago. If the Longyu and Hashan systems shared the same geomagnetic alignment, it would suggest that their design, or at least their blueprint, originated during the last ice age, long before Chinese civilization ever existed. That would rewrite history as we know it. Not everyone agreed, of course. Mainstream historians dismissed these claims as coincidental, arguing that ancient builders could not have known about magnetic north. But that didn't stop speculation from growing. Documentaries began airing on international television, blending science and mystery. Some claimed the caves were ancient power stations, part of an energy network that once spanned the planet. Others said they were archives, storage vaults for lost knowledge buried deliberately beneath the earth to survive disaster. One popular fringe theory suggested that the Longyu caves might be part of a network linked to the fabled Hall of Records, supposedly hidden beneath the Sphinx in Egypt, both built with the same geometric logic and acoustic design. A global map began circulating online, connecting Longyu, Derinkuyu, the Mayan cenotes, the Ajanta caves, and even underground temples in Malta through nearly identical angular spacing and ratios. Coincidence or pattern? But the Chinese government remained silent. Tourism brochures showcased only Cave 1, well-lit, smooth, and safe for visitors. The other 23? Under restoration. Independent explorers who attempted to sneak into restricted zones reportedly vanished or were detained. One anonymous blogger claimed that his uncle, a geologist, had been part of a team that found metallic surfaces beneath one of the sealed caves. 2 days after posting that claim, his account was deleted, and his IP address was traced to Hangzhou. In 2018, a European research group obtained satellite imagery that seemed to show boreholes and vent shafts above the restricted Longyu region. Shafts that weren't there before. Were they part of a preservation project? Or a cover-up? No one could confirm. But one thing was certain. Whatever the caves once held, the modern world wasn't ready to reveal it. Today, the Longyu Caves remain one of the greatest unsolved enigmas of human history, a feat of engineering that shouldn't exist, carved with tools we still can't replicate perfectly by hand, executed without records, without waste, without explanation. Every pillar stands like a monument to a forgotten chapter of human civilization, one that whispers from beneath the soil of Zhejiang province, that perhaps we've built our modern world on the ruins of something greater. And as more researchers turn their eyes toward China's underground, they're starting to realize the Longyu mystery may not just rewrite history, it might rewrite humanity itself. Because if an entire civilization once mastered the earth beneath our feet, then maybe, just maybe, our story isn't starting here. It's starting again. For centuries, the people of Zhejiang believed the Longyu Caves were nothing more than natural formations, deep ponds that never dried, endless shadows stretching into the ground. But when those ponds were drained, what they found beneath wasn't nature's work. It was intelligence, purpose, a hidden hand shaping the stone. And yet, the true mystery was never about how the caves were made. It was why. Teams of researchers returned year after year. Laser scans, ground-penetrating radar, high-definition imaging. But there was something the machines couldn't explain, something ancient and deliberate. Every surface of the cave walls was perfectly chiseled with parallel marks, not random strokes, but a code, a rhythm, as if the builders wanted to leave behind not words, but sound. Archaeologists noticed something unsettling. When you stand inside the largest chamber and speak, your voice echoes in a pattern. Not a natural echo. It bounces back in a pulse, timed, deliberate, almost musical. That was when a Chinese historian named Zhao Hui made a radical claim. The caves are not temples, they are instruments, giant acoustic devices carved from the earth itself. If Zhao was right, then someone, thousands of years ago, created a network of resonant stone halls tuned to frequencies the human ear can barely detect. But tuned to what? When sound engineers tested the chambers, they discovered subsonic waves, vibrations felt in the chest more than heard. The same kind of frequency modern militaries use to move matter, or to communicate through long distances underground. And as that revelation spread, the question shifted again. Were these caves built for gods, or something that lived below? A monk from a nearby monastery later shared a chilling story passed down for generations. He said the caves were the gates of the quiet ones, entities that once lived beneath the rivers, banished or sealed away after the sky fell. Ancient poetry described it too. When heaven cracked and fire fell, the earth was carved to hide the heart of the world. Scientists called it myth, but the villagers didn't. In 2019, a local farmer claimed to have heard low hums coming from beneath his field at night, vibrations like a massive engine turning deep below the soil. His story was dismissed until seismic monitors recorded faint rhythmic tremors under the cave network. No earthquakes, no machinery, just a deep, pulsing beat, every 42 seconds. What was it? Nobody knows. And perhaps that's why the Chinese government quietly restricted new research in the area. Foreign journalists who once filmed documentaries there were denied access. The official reason? Preservation. But preservation of what? The caves, or the truth beneath them? The Longyu Caves stand today in silence. Massive, empty, echoing tombs of stone. Tourists walk through their shadows, taking photos, laughing, unaware that every sound they make ripples against something ancient, something listening. More than 30 years after their discovery, no one has explained who carved them. No bones, no tools, no soot, no inscriptions, just perfection. And the more you study the walls, the stranger they become. Each groove, each mark, every surface, identical, as if the work was done by a single machine, or a single mind. If humans built them, where are the records? Where are the myths celebrating their creation? China has poems about mountains, rivers, and emperors, but not a single story about carving an underground city from solid rock. Some researchers now whisper that the Longyu Caves are older than China itself, built before known civilization, before the first dynasties, perhaps even before the last ice age. Others believe they're connected to similar subterranean structures found across the world: Derinkuyu in Turkey, the Hypogeum of Malta, the caves of Ajanta in India. Different continents, same precision, same mystery. As if ancient humanity once shared a blueprint, or answered to the same architects. What if the caves weren't made for people, but by something else? The black stone carvings, the acoustic frequencies, the unnatural echoes, all of it hints at a purpose far beyond human understanding. Were the Longyu Caves once energy chambers, storage vaults, refuges from something cosmic that struck the earth? Or were they simply forgotten? A relic of a civilization erased from history, leaving behind only the whisper of their work. When the last camera crew packed up and the lights went out, one of the archaeologists stayed behind. He stood in the largest chamber alone, recording the sound of his own footsteps. Then, in the middle of the silence, a new sound echoed back. Not his own. A slow, deliberate tap from the darkness. 2 beats, then 3. Like someone, or something, answering. He never released the audio, but those who worked with him say he never went back. To this day, the caves remain a quiet monument to something beyond comprehension, proof that we are not the first to walk this earth and wonder. And maybe, just maybe, some mysteries were never meant to be solved, only heard.